the teller whispered to her colleague. Another one trying to open an account with cash from who knows where. She had no idea the suspicious Muslim woman in line was the person who signed her paycheck every month. If you want to witness how 15 minutes of discrimination became the most expensive assumption in banking history, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell, because what happens next will leave you speechless about how prejudice destroys careers in real time. But let's go back to where it all began. Amira Osman adjusted her silk hijab as she stepped through the revolving glass doors of First National Bank, her Louboutin heels clicking against the marble floor with quiet confidence. The afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows caught the subtle gold threading in her modest black dress, designer fabric that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her leather handbag, crafted by Italian artisans, held documents that would change everything in the next 15 minutes. Teller Rebecca Chen looked up from her computer screen and immediately felt her stomach tighten. Another hijabi woman walking toward her station. In her 3 years behind the counter, she developed what she called situational awareness, really a collection of unconscious biases disguised as professional instinct. Muslim women meant complications. Cash transactions from questionable sources. Money transfers to suspicious overseas accounts. Language barriers that slowed down her transaction times and hurt her performance metrics. "Sarah, look," Rebecca whispered to her colleague at the next window, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by nearby customers. Another one trying to open an account with cash from who knows where. Sarah Martinez glanced up from counting bills, her eyes tracking Amira's approach with a practiced assessment of someone trained to spot unusual banking patterns, code words that barely disguised profiling. Amira heard the whispered comment, but showed no reaction. 28 years of building a financial empire had taught her patience with ignorance. Her expression remained serene as she approached Rebecca's window, though her dark eyes held a calculating quality that would have warned more perceptive observers. This wasn't her first encounter with discrimination, but today it would be her last at First National Bank. "Good afternoon," Amira said, her voice carrying the refined accent of someone educated at international universities. "I need to make a withdrawal from my account." Her English was flawless, each word precisely enunciated, but Rebecca heard foreign influence and immediately assumed limited comprehension and potential communication difficulties. "Ma'am, for large cash withdrawals, we require advance notice, proper identification, and verification of fund sources," Rebecca replied in the deliberately slow, loud voice people used when they assumed language barriers. "How much money are you trying to take out today?" The word "trying" carried implications that made other customers glance over with curiosity. Amira placed her black American Express Centurion card on the marble counter, the legendary invitation-only card that required a 7-figure annual income and $10,000 yearly fee. The heavy metal card made a soft clink against the stone surface. Rebecca stared at it, as if it were radioactive material. She'd only seen these cards in banking magazines. Someone like this woman couldn't possibly have legitimate access to such exclusive financial instruments. "I need to withdraw $50,000, Amira said calmly, her voice carrying no hint of the storm building behind her composed exterior. "From my primary checking account." Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she took the card. The magnetic strip felt heavier than normal cards, and the distinctive black metal surface reflected the overhead lights like a mirror. "Ma'am, this is a very exclusive card," Rebecca stammered, her professional composure cracking. "Are you sure this belongs to you? We have strict policies about card fraud and identity theft." The implication hung in the air like toxic smoke. Muslim woman with expensive card equals suspicious activity. The equation felt natural to Rebecca's biased instincts. Sarah leaned over from her station, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the banking floor. "Rebecca, call Mr. Patterson. We need management for this situation." Other customers began paying attention, phones appearing as people sensed drama developing. The afternoon banking routine was about to become a viral moment. Amira watched the staff consultation with infinite patience, her hands folded over her handbag containing documents that would destroy careers and reshape corporate policies. But she wasn't ready to reveal those papers yet. Sometimes prejudice needed to expose itself completely before justice could arrive. "Ma'am," Rebecca returned with forced professionalism, We're going to need additional verification for this transaction. Driver's license, social security card, proof of employment, and documentation showing how you obtained this card. The list of requirements grew longer with each demand, obstacles designed to discourage problematic customers from completing transactions. Security guard Marcus Williams moved closer to Amira's position, his hand resting on his radio with practiced readiness. His 20 years of mall security had taught him to recognize potential issues, though his pattern recognition was heavily influenced by racial and religious profiling disguised as professional vigilance. "Is there a problem with my account?" Amira asked, her voice remaining calm despite the growing crowd of spectators. Several customers were now recording with their phones, sensing that something significant was developing. The hashtag banking while Muslim will be trending within hours. Manager David Patterson emerged from his office, straightening his tie as he approached the situation. His expensive suit and confident stride spoke of someone accustomed to handling difficult customers and maintaining the bank's reputation for exclusive service. What he didn't expect was the quiet dignity radiating from the hijabi woman causing the commotion. "Ma'am, I'm David Patterson, branch manager," he announced with the authority of someone who'd resolved countless customer disputes. "I understand there's some confusion about account verification." His tone carried the patronizing quality of someone speaking to a child or foreigner. Amira looked directly into Patterson's eyes with unflinching confidence. "No confusion, Mr. Patterson. I simply want to withdraw my own money from my own account." Her voice carried a new edge that made Patterson's pulse quicken. This wasn't the submissive response he expected from someone caught in potential fraud. The banking floor fell silent, except for the soft sounds of phones recording and whispered conversations. 15 customers were now watching the confrontation, and 3 different people were live streaming to social media platforms. The afternoon deposit that would change everything was about to begin. Patterson studied Amira's face, searching for signs of deception or nervousness. Instead, he found steady confidence and something else: anticipation. As if she was waiting for exactly this moment to reveal something that would change everything forever. Manager David Patterson studied Amira's Centurion card with theatrical suspicion, his fingers tracing the metal edges, as if expecting to find evidence of forgery. "Ma'am, acquiring this level of credit requires extensive background checks and significant financial documentation. We need to verify how someone in your situation obtained such exclusive banking privileges." The word "situation" hung in the air like poison gas. Amira's composure never wavered, but something dangerous flickered behind her eyes. "My situation, Mr. Patterson?" Her voice carried a silky quality that made Patterson's confidence falter slightly. "You understand what I mean," Patterson replied, his voice dropping to avoid the recording phones. "Traditional Islamic dress, cash withdrawal requests, premium cards that require invitation-only membership. The pattern raises red flags in our fraud prevention protocols." Rebecca Chen leaned closer to her colleague Sarah, whispering loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "I bet it's one of those arranged marriage situations. Rich old man gives young wife access to accounts, and now she's trying to clean him out before divorce proceedings." Security guard Marcus Williams positioned himself directly behind Amira, his presence designed to intimidate. But instead of nervous fidgeting or defensive postures, Amira simply reached into her handbag with deliberate slowness. Patterson tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward the silent alarm button. "Mr. Patterson," Amira said calmly, withdrawing a leather business card holder, "before you activate that alarm, perhaps you should see proper identification." The holder was embossed with gold lettering that caught the overhead lights. Patterson squinted at the text, trying to read the corporate logo from his position. "Corporate identification isn't sufficient for this level of withdrawal," Patterson insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier authority. "We need government-issued photo ID, proof of employment, and documentation explaining the source of these funds." 3 customers were now live-streaming the confrontation on TikTok and Instagram. Comments flooded in expressing outrage at the obvious discrimination. Local news stations monitoring social media began dispatching crews to First National Bank's downtown location. Amira handed over her driver's license, a simple document that made Patterson's hand shake as he read the address. 1247 Millionaires Row, the most expensive residential street in the city. The kind of address that appeared in Forbes magazine articles about America's wealthiest entrepreneurs. This address. Patterson's voice trailed off as reality began shifting beneath his feet. This is impossible. That neighborhood requires a minimum net worth of $50 million. He stared at the license as if it contained nuclear launch codes. Is my address a problem, Mr. Patterson? Amira asked sweetly. Should I withdraw my money from a bank that questions where successful people choose to live? The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Patterson felt his career prospects evaporating like morning mist. Rebecca's computer screen chimed with an urgent alert. Account balance verification had returned results that made her face go chalk white. The number on her screen contained more zeros than she'd ever seen in a single account. More money than the entire branch handled in monthly transactions. Sir, Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. You need to see this account balance immediately. Patterson moved to her terminal, his eyes scanning the numbers with growing disbelief. The account showed deposits from Fortune 500 companies, wire transfers from international banks, and an available balance that exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. But it was the account holder's employment information that made Patterson's knees buckle. Chief Executive Officer, First National Bank Corporation. The woman they'd been discriminating against for 15 minutes was their boss. The bank fell silent except for the sound of phones recording history in real time. The words, Chief Executive Officer, First National Bank Corporation, glowed on Rebecca's computer screen like a death sentence. Patterson staggered backward, his expensive tie suddenly feeling like a noose around his neck. The woman they'd been discriminating against for 20 minutes wasn't just a customer. She was the person who signed their paychecks, approved their budgets, and held their careers in her perfectly manicured hands. That's impossible, Patterson whispered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. The CEO is... We've never met her in person, but she can't be. He caught himself before finishing the sentence. But the implication hung in the recycled bank air like toxic smoke. She can't be Muslim. She can't wear hijab. She can't look like this. Amira Osman smiled for the first time since entering the bank, and the expression was more terrifying than any show of anger. Can't be what, Mr. Patterson? Can't be the woman who built this institution from 3 branches to 300? Can't be the person who increased your stock value by 400% in 5 years? Rebecca's hands trembled as she scrolled through Amira's account history. Wire transfers from the Federal Reserve. Corporate salary deposits that exceeded the GDP of small countries. Investment returns that made Warren Buffett look like an amateur. Every transaction screamed legitimate wealth, institutional power, executive authority. Ma'am, Ms. Osman. CEO Osman. Patterson stammered, his professional vocabulary disintegrating under pressure. We had no way of knowing. Your appearance doesn't match our executive profiles. He was digging his grave deeper with every word. My appearance, Amira repeated softly, her voice carrying the dangerous calm of someone about to destroy careers in real time. Mr. Patterson, are you suggesting that Muslim women can't be bank executives? That hijab indicates criminal activity? That my religious faith disqualifies me from financial success? The livestream viewers had climbed past 15,000 as word spread across social media. Comments flooded in expressing shock, outrage, and vindication. Hashtag Muslim CEO and hashtag banking discrimination were trending globally. Major news outlets were monitoring the feeds, preparing emergency coverage of corporate discrimination caught on camera. Security guard Marcus Williams backed away from Amira, as if she carried contagious disease. His radio crackled with urgent messages from bank headquarters. All units, we have a code red situation at downtown branch. Executive management requesting immediate damage control protocols. Sarah Martinez had gone completely pale, realizing that her whispered comments about suspicious Muslim customers had been recorded by multiple phones and would be replaying on news networks within hours. Her 3 years of banking experience were about to become 3 years of unemployment. Rebecca, Amira's voice cut through the chaos like a surgical blade. Please explain to me why a simple withdrawal request became a discrimination investigation. Why did my hijab trigger fraud protocols? Why did my religion require additional verification? Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Every training manual, every corporate policy, every legal guideline she'd learned was screaming that she'd violated federal civil rights laws. Ma'am, the procedures. I thought. Her voice trailed off as she realized there was no explanation that wouldn't sound like pure bigotry. Amira opened her leather portfolio and withdrew a document that made Patterson's remaining color drain from his face. Corporate letterhead, legal terminology, and the kind of dense text that preceded massive lawsuits. This is my personal attorney's preliminary assessment of religious discrimination in banking practices. He's been monitoring this interaction through the live streams. Patterson's phone buzzed with an incoming call from the board of directors. The caller ID showed, "Emergency board meeting. Answer immediately." His hands shook as he declined the call, knowing that answering would only accelerate his professional destruction. 15 minutes. Amira continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding corporate boardrooms. 15 minutes of documented discrimination, religious profiling, and assumption-based customer service. Do you have any idea what this footage is worth in federal court? The bank's main floor had become a theater of humiliation, with 20 customers recording every word, every gesture, every moment of career-ending prejudice. The afternoon banking routine had transformed into the most expensive civil rights lesson in financial history. Marcus Williams' radio erupted with panic from headquarters. "We have 17 news vans en route to your location. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC are requesting immediate interviews. The FBI's Civil Rights Division has been notified of potential federal violations." Amira checked her Apple Watch, a subtle gesture that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "Mr. Patterson, in the next 60 seconds, you have an opportunity to save what's left of your career. The choice is yours." Patterson stared at the woman he'd humiliated, knowing that his next words would determine whether he'd be unemployed by dinner time or completely unemployable by morning. The CEO they'd never recognized was about to teach them why assumptions cost more than education. Patterson's phone exploded with incoming calls from board members, corporate lawyers, and crisis management teams as the livestream viewer count surged past 25,000. His hands trembled as he stared at Amira Osman, the woman whose discrimination lawsuit could bankrupt the entire institution. "CEO Osman, please, we can resolve this professionally. This was a simple misunderstanding based on standard security protocols." "Standard protocols," Amira repeated, her voice carrying the deadly calm of someone about to unleash corporate devastation. "Mr. Patterson, in your 5 years as branch manager, how many white customers have you required to provide 3 forms of identification for withdrawing their own money?" The question hit like a precision missile, exposing the mathematical impossibility of his defense. Rebecca Chun began hyperventilating as the reality crashed over her like a tsunami. This suspicious Muslim woman she'd whispered about was the person who approved her salary increases, vacation requests, and performance bonuses. Her career wasn't just ending. It was being documented in real time for millions of viewers. Amira's phone buzzed with a call from her personal attorney, David Goldstein, one of the most feared civil rights lawyers in the country. She answered on speakerphone, her voice carrying across the silent banking floor. "David, are you monitoring the live streams?" Every second, Amira, Goldstein's voice filled the marble-walled space. "We have documented evidence of religious discrimination, racial profiling, and violation of federal banking regulations. This is a federal case with punitive damages in the 8-figure range." Patterson felt his knees buckle as the legal implications became crystal clear. 8-figure damages, federal investigation, career destruction, his children's college funds evaporating along with his reputation. "Sir, Mr. Goldstein, we're willing to discuss settlement terms immediately." "Settlement?" Amira's laugh was sharp as a blade. "Mr. Patterson, you assumed I was a terrorist because of my hijab. Your staff whispered about another one trying to deposit suspicious cash. You treated me like a criminal for being Muslim in my own bank." The livestream comments exploded with outrage as viewers realized the full scope of the discrimination. Major news outlets were now broadcasting the feeds directly. The hashtag Muslim vote discrimination was trending globally, with politicians, celebrities, and civil rights leaders sharing the footage. Security guard Marcus Williams received urgent radio communication from headquarters. All corporate executives are en route to your location. FBI civil rights investigators have been dispatched. Prepare for federal interview protocols. Sarah Martinez collapsed into a customer chair, sobbing uncontrollably as she realized her whispered comments had been recorded and would follow her forever. "I have 3 children," she whispered. "What am I going to tell them? How do I explain that mommy lost her job for being racist?" Amira studied Sarah's breakdown with no visible emotion. "Ms. Martinez, your children deserve to know that actions have consequences. That prejudice isn't just morally wrong, it's legally expensive." Patterson's computer screen displayed emergency alerts from corporate headquarters. Stock price dropping in real time. Board members demanding immediate explanations. Shareholders filing complaints. The discrimination was costing millions of dollars per minute as investors fled the scandal. CEO Osman. Patterson's voice was barely audible. "What can we do to make this right? Public apology? Diversity training? Corporate policy changes?" His desperation was palpable as he watched his career disintegrate with each passing second. Amira checked her watch again, the gesture that had become her signature power move. "Mr. Patterson, making it right isn't about apologies. It's about accountability. Your staff needs to understand that discrimination has consequences." The bank's main doors opened as news crews began arriving, their cameras and reporters rushing to document the most expensive case of banking discrimination in history. Corporate lawyers in expensive suits hurried past customers, their faces grim with the knowledge that this lawsuit would reshape industry practices forever. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amira addressed the crowd of customers and cameras, "you've witnessed how assumptions become headlines, how prejudice becomes lawsuits, and how discrimination becomes corporate crisis. In the next hour, this incident will cost First National Bank approximately $200 million in stock value." Rebecca's computer displayed a message that made her remaining hope evaporate. "Emergency board resolution. Terminate all involved personnel immediately. Legal department authorizes maximum settlement to prevent federal prosecution." Patterson stared at the termination order, knowing his 20-year banking career had ended because he couldn't see past a hijab to recognize his own CEO. Amira Osman smiled as federal investigators entered the building, their badges glinting under the lights. The reckoning was just beginning. The FBI civil rights investigators arrived at First National Bank to a scene that resembled a corporate apocalypse. 17 news vans lined the street. Federal agents examined security footage, and Amira Osman sat calmly in the bank president's chair, the position that had always been rightfully hers, but which her own employees had never imagined she could occupy. Agent Sarah Chun, no relation to the disgraced teller, spread legal documents across Patterson's former desk. "Ms. Osman, we have documented evidence of systematic discrimination, religious profiling, and violation of federal banking regulations. This case will reshape civil rights enforcement in financial institutions." Patterson stood in the lobby with a banker's box containing his personal items, watching his replacement, a diversity and inclusion specialist, assume his former office. His 20-year career had ended in 20 minutes of recorded prejudice. Rebecca Chun had already been escorted from the building, her termination papers citing gross misconduct and civil rights violations. Sarah Martinez approached Amira with red-rimmed eyes, her children's photos clutched in her shaking hands. "CEO Osman, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but my children, they're asking why mommy can't go to work anymore. What do I tell them about what I said?" Amira's expression softened slightly as she studied the photographs. 3 young faces that would grow up knowing their mother had lost everything because of prejudice. "Tell them that words have power, Ms. Martinez. That assumptions about people's religion or appearance can destroy lives. Tell them their mother learned the most expensive lesson of her career." The live stream had reached 200,000 viewers across multiple platforms as major networks broadcast the aftermath. CNN's legal analyst was explaining federal discrimination penalties. Fox News was interviewing civil rights lawyers about banking industry reforms. The hashtag #AmiraJustice was trending globally with millions of shares. Marcus Williams sat in federal custody, his security license permanently revoked. The man who'd positioned himself to intimidate a suspicious Muslim customer was now facing federal charges for civil rights violations under color of authority. His 20 years of discriminatory professional instinct had finally met legal consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, Amira addressed the cameras and remaining staff. What you've witnessed today isn't just individual prejudice. It's systemic discrimination disguised as professional procedure. When my own employees couldn't imagine a Muslim woman as their CEO, we see how deeply bias penetrates corporate culture. First National Bank's stock price had plummeted 23% in 6 hours, wiping out $800 million in market value. Shareholders were demanding board resignations. Competitors were poaching corporate accounts. The discrimination that lasted 15 minutes would cost the institution decades of rebuilding trust. Agent Shun handed Amira a preliminary settlement offer from the corporate legal team, $47 million in damages, mandatory diversity training for all employees, federal oversight of hiring practices, and establishment of a civil rights compliance department with $20 million annual funding. $47 million, Amira said to the cameras, for 15 minutes of assumptions. This is what prejudice costs in federal court. This is why discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's financially devastating. 6 months later, the Patterson-Martinez Protocol would become mandatory training at every major bank in America. Rebecca and Sarah would travel to financial institutions nationwide, sharing their story and teaching employees about unconscious bias. Patterson would work at a small credit union, grateful for employment, and forever changed by his public humiliation. The customer who'd live-streamed the initial discrimination, college student Maya Hassan, received a full scholarship to law school from Amira's foundation. Her footage had become required viewing in civil rights law courses across the country. Amira returned to her office that evening, scrolling through messages from Muslim professionals worldwide who'd found courage to speak up against workplace discrimination. Her desk held hundreds of letters from hijabi women in corporate America, thanking her for proving that success wasn't limited by assumptions. The prayer call app on her phone chimed softly, the same innocent sound that had started countless other stories of discrimination. But now, across America, that sound carried different associations. Not suspicion, but respect. Not fear, but understanding. First National Bank's diversity initiatives had become the gold standard for financial institutions. Their stock price had not only recovered, but reached record highs as consumers flocked to a bank that had proven discrimination wouldn't be tolerated. Amira Osman looked out her office window at the city she'd helped build through decades of careful investment and strategic leadership. The woman they'd tried to humiliate for wearing hijab had transformed an industry through the power of accountability. The revolution had been live-streamed from a marble banking floor, but the real change happened in boardrooms, training sessions, and every interaction where employees now thought twice before making assumptions. What injustice will you document today? Share your stories below. Subscribe if you believe success isn't limited by stereotypes. The next Amira Osman is waiting for their moment. Will you be recording when it happens?